Sorry, I'm really nervous actually, and I was trying to figure out why I was so nervous, and I realized I'm really nervous because I actually really care tremendously about this project. And so before I start telling you what we want to do, I'd really like to tell you sort of why we want to do it. And my name is Sydney. I've been a Berkeley resident for 12 years. I've always worked in arts and social enterprise, creating sustainable business models for those organizations. I recently ran the conservatoire in Blackheath and turned that around. And a year and a half ago, I went to work for John and Laurie Wilson, who are RJK / Copeland Park, which most of you may know as the Bussey Building in Peckham. Does anybody know what the Bussey Building is? Anybody been there? Excellent. In case you don't know, it is a big old industrial site that John and Laurie bought 25 years ago. It has become the cultural quarter of Peckham, and Southwark regularly cites it as basically the cornerstone of the entire creative regeneration of Peckham, and social regeneration and economic. I went to work for John and Laurie because although they're not a charity or a social enterprise, they had an incredibly interesting commercial model on how to create basically an arts community and a creative community without subsidized funding, that because of my background I was quite interested in. And also what I loved was that they married that with a tremendous amount of community engagement, social impact work, which they didn't even realize they were doing, but they have done. Now, the reason we care about this so much, and the reason why I was so nervous, I think, to talk to you, is because we're all local. I will ask John to stand up for just 1 second so you can say hello to him. This is the man who created the hippest spot in Peckham. But as you can see, and I love you, John, but I am going to tell them that this is not a hipster. And it must be said that John and Laurie are so non-hipsters that they actually are building surveyors. And they're, you don't get any squarer than that, do you, John?
I'm not a builder.
Yeah, right. And their surveying business has been in Hither Green for 30 years. We are also working with Hillman Construction, whose family-owned surveying business, construction business, has also been in Hither Green for 30 years. Interestingly enough, they didn't know each other until this project. And we're also working in partnership with the Albany Theatre in Deptford. And we have the amazing Benny O'Looney, heritage architect from Peckham. And we're also working with William Mann, whose architecture firm did the theater space at the Albany. So all of us on the team either live or work, or live and work here. And all of us have walked past that building for years and said, my God, something amazing could happen here. And we want it to happen because we live here. So now I feel a little calmer, so that's good. And I'm going to tell you what we would like to do. Basically, what we want to do is reinstate this fantastic building to being the center of the community that it was for so long. But we want to do that in a way that fits with the wants and the needs of a 21st century community now. We want to take this building and basically create a center, a cultural quarter for Ladywell, an exciting, creative quarter. And our plan has three. Can we just go back to the picture of the buildings? Yeah. We wanted, as previous people have mentioned to you, this was an extraordinary building that was built by the Victorians for bathing, health and hygiene, all of that, super, super important, but it was also, and the community spirit that it showed and the dedication to community was amazing. But it was also a building that separated people by class, and we want to make this a building that brings people from everywhere in and enables them to work together and to create together. We want to open it up and open it out. And our vision has 3 strands to it. The first strand is to restore this amazing building. We want to, and Benny's going to speak to that more in depth, because he's an architect and so he can do that. And to fill it with a variety of things. You know, we want it to be a teaching space. We want it to have subsidized art studios. We want it to have a cinema. And the absolute sort of jewel in the crown, I think, of our proposal is to take the first-class baths area and to transform that into a performance and event space, working with the Albany to program it in a wide and varied way so that it would be receiving professional productions from the biggest arts organizations down to also staging community things with local people. So an incredible cross-section of works, and also could be used for cinema and film as well. The second strand of this is what we call more than enabling development. And I know that this is a sensitive issue because I live here too, and I don't want this site to be ruined. But I have to tell you, I'm actually a big proponent of the enabling development that we are proposing on this site, not just because it's going to help us raise a significant portion of the funding that we need. The Playtower is going to cost at least £5 million to restore and to put into use the way that we want to. And the enabling development that we're proposing will bring us in 1.8 million of that. And the balance of that we would pull from the Heritage Lottery Fund and also from other sources of grant and charitable income, which is my background. The enabling development that we're proposing are 3 buildings. There's a block of 20 flats. And they're all rentable, they're not for sale. There's a smaller live-work unit space of 4 live-work studios. And then there is this building that Benny will talk more about, which we're calling the Pavilion. If you see some of the older original plans of this building, you'll see that there actually was a plan for a building in between the Coroner's Court and the Playtower. And I actually think that it really finishes the street scheme by putting that building there. And that building would extend, we would use that for rentals in the same way that we are using the Playtower and that we use the Bussey Building Copeland Park site. We don't have any of these rentals confirmed yet. We know they'll come. It's not that we don't have them. I'm not saying that because that's a risk, because we know they'll come. But what we're saying is that the possibility for what the community wants in these spaces, or even the other bidders, all of that is possible in the model that we're putting forward. And the third strand, which is very close to my heart and is one of the biggest pieces of this project for me, is that we are actually putting social impact and community engagement at the absolute heart of our business model. So it's not a bolt-on. The whole point is that we want to open this building out to the community, and we want to ensure that the community benefits from having this resource in the middle of it. So we will be forming a CIC, a community interest company, a social enterprise, that will be funded through a levy that's placed on all of the leases from the building, and also on shareholder profit that funds the CIC, that then delivers a whole range of engagement, social impact projects, from training schemes to festivals, to open studios, to school visits, to the Albany's Meet Me at the Albany program, which is for elderly people living in sheltered accommodation. So all of that would be very much at the heart of bringing this site alive again for the community. that's enough talking from me. I'm going to let you see some more pretty pictures and plans for what we're going to do.
Thanks a lot, Sydney. And chime in if something grabs you here that needs amplifying. As Sydney said, we're architects based in Peckham, and we've been working on repairing the local railway station, Peckham Railway Station, and various other conservation and new build projects around our neighborhood. And it's been such a treat to collaborate with old and new friends here. And so I'll just quickly scoot through the architectural plans. It's been a little bit like architecture school in our office for the last couple of weeks as we very rapidly pulled this scheme together in the course of about a month. But we've had a grand time, and we hope that kind of comes across a little bit in these drawings. There is a familiar view of the bathhouse when it was built by the mighty Thomas Aldwinkle in the 1880s, one of the rogue Goth architects. And one of the things that we see is quite important in the scheme that we're putting forward is, of course, restoring the Lombardic Gothic tower, which was such a great part of the local townscape. Perplexingly, for quite a small amount of time, it only seems to have been there for about 20 years or so. But it's a fine thing for those of you guys that have been to Milan, like the Sforza Castle, which of course it's based on Lombardic Gothic sort of thing. And we don't think it's going to be that terribly expensive to restore. And so we've been looking, rooting around in local archives and finding what pictures and drawings we can find of the building. And so we think that's really important to bring this fantastic bit of townscape back to Ladywell. And otherwise, of course, a lot of the fabric of the front part of this building is still intact there. And so we propose to restore the doors and windows, replace bits that are some of the joinery that's missing, but generally look after the front of the building because we think townscapes is important as, of course, opening this building up to the community. One of the happy things about this experience has been working with the great Witherford, Watson and Mann, who are Albany's architects, and it's been really interesting collaborating with them. And one of the things that we all agreed on as we got around the trace paper around the table was to kind of make some kind of a focal point that, the other competitors of all have suggested there could be a kind of lively focus in the heart of this building where there's a great big light well. Mm-hmm. And that allows us to circulate both east-west, north-south across the middle part of this ensemble of historic buildings. And also becomes a happy place to bring together the studios and the creative business uses.
As I mentioned, this building was originally created to separate people. So when you first walk in the main doors, there's a big wall, and you were essentially supposed to turn one way if you were first class and another way if you were second. And so what we're proposing is to take down that wall. First of all, because it makes a bigger foyer space, and also because symbolically we quite like it. So you take down the front wall, you walk into this lovely lobby, and then what we're proposing is that we would then push through one of the windows, create a door, so that you then walk into this central courtyard that, again, we agreed wouldn't have a roof. So there'd be something quite magical about coming into this garden courtyard.
And celebrate the Great Chimney, which is a focal point of bathhouses, 19th and early 20th century bathhouses across the country. Here's a sketch section that, as it's getting a little bit darker, you can maybe just about see the idea of creating this big foyer in here. See this area here, courtyard space here, and exploiting this quite large basement space to create a small studio cinema. And in the nighttime, when we see this hall, the mighty first-class baths used a bit more, which could not only be theatre but a music space too, this foyer can help circulate and accommodate the folk coming to the various performances here.
We should say that at the moment we have a small studio cinema in the basement, but that we're also considering putting a cinema. We know we want a cinema, it's just a question of where it goes. Or maybe there are different screens on different parts of the site. So that's one potential there. Also, going back to the earlier question about disabled access, we do have disabled parking on site, and we also have a lift that will be accessible to make all of the floors in the Playtower disabled accessible as well.
Quickly, we'll scoot through the plans. This is the slightly enlarged basement of the main former bathhouse. Here we can see the ground level showing access across the site via a ground level courtyard, and then of course the mighty first class baths on the right hand side. And then here we can see a vision for the first floor with a variety of studio workspaces on the eastern part of the site, and then the gallery reinstated to the first class baths, which will be the theatre or music venue. And then here we can see a section through the site. These are drawings from our comrades at Witherford Watson Mann, again showing possibilities, cinema here, shared courtyard space, a green wall exploiting the sun, and possibly a tree in this space too, restored chimney, and the great clerestory at the top of the bathhouse. Here a section looking east-west, showing, of course, the restored baths here, this courtyard space, and the studios and workspaces akin to the kind of things happening in the Bussey building on the east side.
We've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to just show you very quickly that one of the great things about the theater space that we're proposing is that it's completely adaptable and flexible. So it can take all sorts of different types of performance, including actually in the not water-filled pool. So we will make use of we will restore the tiles in the pool, and we'll make use of that space for performance, audiences, orchestra pits, all of that. We're going to go into more than enabling development because...
Yeah, okay, so yeah, we plan to keep the pool as it is and kind of inhabit the pool too. And then here's a cutaway view that we made that shows the idea of life and animation back in the old bathhouse. And then the wider picture for the site, it's an incredible site, as has been pointed out by our colleagues. There's a fabulous collection of Victorian and Edwardian buildings, and of course the former medieval church just to the south. And so it's been really interesting kind of thinking about how to fit new buildings in this area. And so we've kind of come up with an idea of a family of buildings that sort of relate together. Simple brick buildings that use the lovely red, soft red brick of the listed bathhouse, and then create a very open, this pavilion-like building with loggia. We see it as a restaurant, possibly with a recital room or office space above, a series of studio buildings here to the south side of the site, and then this gentle, quiet little block of flats at the far south part of the site. The landscape is absolutely essential to this because it's...
Can I talk about the landscape? I'm sorry, I just love the landscape. If you look at the site now, it's wild and it's overgrown. It's got this really magical feel to it. Even to the point where you find these plaster of Paris animals all over the place from when it used to be a kid's playground. You also, of course, have the second-class pool that burnt out, but the pool, I don't know if you know, is still underneath there and is still, you know, it just needs all the stuff taken out of it. So what we're proposing is that we sort of are creating a secret space so that you would go through the gates and there would be landscape, little meadows, there's a courtyard garden, that we would still keep a bunch of these whimsical little elements, and that we would then create a sunken garden in the second-class pool, which I particularly love because it would be its own little sort of rainforest ecosystem, and we'll bring school kids there to play with the pollywugs, right?
That's right. That's our Nothofagus forest. You can see the... There's we're a part of the old second-class baths made into a sunken garden. We see the roots to the cheerful flats at the back along the western part of the site here with birch trees, bicycle parking here, and a little kind of small hint of allotments there. The central part of the site, we think of the service road that leads to the disabled parking here, also facilitates the way that we see deliveries coming to the hall here, so trucks could come in here, back out here, and come back out onto Ladywell Road. And then the old well is remembered here in this second kind of courtyard, an open courtyard space. So there's this inner kind of courtyard space that unites the listed building, and then another one here, forming a kind of intermediary space between these studios, workspaces that we're positioning here, forming a screen, fairly low level, 2-story structures here. And then this open kind of pavilion building that we see as a restaurant that will not only serve the community, but serve this great, mighty venue that we're proposing here. And also, of course, long-term, the potential for a connection to this incredible ensemble of mortuary and coroner's court. And so here's a section looking along, showing this pavilion building here, these little live-work kind of creatures here. And then this is a long section through the site that again shows these studios, this courtyard space, and the flats behind, which still sit below the luscious canopies of the trees in St. Mary's Churchyard. And here's a section across the site looking north-south, and then some detailed plans that we prepared that show the kind of public face of the building. Here we see stripes in red and blue bricks, kind of cheerfully evoking the polychromy of the Victorian architecture, this pavilion building, and then this kind of shared lawn, which is a place to sit, and very much...
And we're out of time.
Oh, we're out of time. Oh, okay. Hang on,
we were
a couple
really
of last
trying.
ones.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We can leave it there. We have some books if you want to see the printouts afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. So we've got about 10 minutes left for any questions here. So here goes roving Andy. Anybody?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very illuminative. One question I was going to ask was about the flats. Mm-hmm. In terms of their height, what are we talking about? 2 floors, 3 floors, 4 floors, 5 floors, 6 floors, 4 floors?
But they sit below the one that's currently there, so they're lower than the block behind.
Oh, so a level behind them, really, in fact. Okay, that's
2,
great.
we think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, two levels behind.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
You talked about the Albany bringing in big productions, small productions into the main swimming pool. That obviously requires quite a lot of suspension points, equipment and so on. What happens if you find that the structure won't actually cope with that sort of equipment?
That's exactly why we employed, there's a specific, obviously you want a specialist architect who does theatrical spaces. And he has looked at the space. Obviously, we have to bring in proper surveyors if the bid would go through and everything. But in the worst case scenario, or probably a combination of the two, we'll work with lighting rigs that sit on the floor and then rig across. So we obviously wouldn't suspend anything from the ceiling that was going to cause damage to the historical fabric.
Hi, could you tell us a bit about Hillman and their role in the project and their experience?
I'm sorry, could you just say that one more time?
Could you tell us a bit about Hillman and their role in the project and their experience?
Absolutely. I mean, Hillman's, we could actually have Gary tell you about Hillman's if he wants, because he's here, but it's a, do you mean how they got involved in the project, or do you mean their experience and their history in the area? Where are you, Gary? This is Gary Hillman of Hillman's.
Yeah, so we were based in Hither Green on Ennisdale Road. There's a 5-story block of flats there with offices there. Yeah, we've done various projects. We've done Ladywell, there's a little eco house at the end there, Irving Road, and to do general sort of build blocks of flats. And we always used to do a lot of Lewisham stuff, extensions in schools and various stuff like that. So a lot of experience in this sort of type of work.
I think what I will say on behalf of Hillman's and the developer, who is the developer to do the enabling work, is that I know we hear the word developer, because I am this way too, and we immediately go, oh my God, he's going to make £1 million and the community is going to be screwed. But I have to tell you that that's not the case. They'll make money, but they won't make as much money as they could if they weren't working with us. And the reason is because the model that we have put together, the business model, is based first and foremost on making this a community-led creative space as opposed to maximizing the ultimate commercial viability of the space. And what I really respected when I brought Hillman's on and when we started talking to the Wilsons about this space is the fact that both of these organizations feel that actually they make enough money out of this. They didn't have to go that level. They made enough money out of what we're proposing. And yeah, that's what I would say. I also kind of like the idea that we're creating rentable flats that will ideally house the kind of artists and creatives that we're talking about working on the site as well. I find that a real positive. Does that answer enough of that? Yeah? Okay, thanks.
Just with regards to the flats, is there going to be any parking available for those flats? Or are you going to assume that no one's going to need a car?
We are planning on attracting people who want to come live in flats, who bicycle, who take public transportation, who are focused on that.
Yeah, but you see,
I understand that you disagree with that.
There's quite a lot of flats going up at the moment, and I live basically just a very short walk away from there. I live in Wearside Road, which is directly opposite the Coroner's Court. And what's happening is all these flats are going up, and they're being sold as with bike areas for bike, or with a 2-year carpooling deal. Now, the problem is that a lot of these families, you can't say to a family, say if a young family wanted to move in, would you say, no, you can't move in here? Because probably that young family will need a car.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Just wait
what
one
you're
moment.
saying.
Will need a car to actually drive the children around, which is fair enough, and that's every right. But what's happening is the people, the residents of the local area, no one's taking us into consideration. Do you know, where I am now, it's almost impossible to find a car park.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so isolated now that I'm pretty much so a hermit. It's taken me an awful lot to get here tonight, and and the thing is that the council then gives these young families, and rightfully so, they need a car, but they give them a parking permit. Then the only place for them to park is in our street, because there is only about 2 streets available for parking. Now, this is just one of my issues, but this is a really bad sore point. You know, I've walked the streets taking up petitions. I got it signed. I managed to get a block of flats stopped. But, you know, now, a few years later, the council's building block flats on that area anyway. So, no matter what we do, the existing... sorry.
I think everything you're saying is extremely valid, and I'm glad that you came out to say it as well. I think what's important, and at this point, is to say that everything we've put up here is a proposal, and that we realize that what we need to do is have a deeper discussion with people around what the main issues are, so that we can all decide what the final vision for this will look like. Now, what I can tell you is that whatever enabling development happens on this site for our business model to happen needs to yield £1.8 million. And none of us are particularly married to what configuration it is that needs to happen to make that happen, okay? So I think that what's important to realize right now is that none of these things are finalized because, of course, it has to go through a process of planning permission, of discussion with everybody about what we want here, how we want to deal with parking. So, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, only this. Yeah. What we can say is that the flats are not large. They're mainly for single people, and they're all going to be let. So there can be restrictions on the letting agreement that they are people who haven't got cars.
I think it's also worth saying that if there's any specific issues you'd like to talk to us about council and about parking, then we could do that at the end of the session, and we could open up the floor to other questions at this point. Is that okay? Okay.
Hi, I'd just like to understand a bit more about the tie-in with the Albany in managing the events in the space. Is that a condition of using the architects that designed the Albany?
No, it's the other way around. No, because as I said, I've worked in the arts my whole career, and I used to run the conservatoire in Blackheath, so I know Gavin Barlow, who's the CEO of the Albany, for a really long time. He also lives locally and has really loved this building for a very long time. And I guess the other thing is that when I think of the kind of marriage of artistic excellence, but also a real commitment to working with a community and understanding its local community from a theatre point of view, that is the Albany to me. So what the Albany has committed is to being a part of this project. They're very interested in programming the space, and we're interested in having them do that, and also to work on the engagement work that comes out of that as well. And so as we were designing the space, I knew that we would need theatre architects, and so it seemed sensible to work with their theatre architects.
So do you also have a relationship with another promoter or management to program the space at the Bussey building? Is it the same model?
No, the Bussey building is a whole... You want to talk about the Bussey building?
I do. If you know the Bussey building, I hope some of you go there.
Yeah.
A bit closer, that's better. I can hear myself now. If you know the Bussey building, please go and see it. We're creating the space there, curating the space there. We manage certain of the events directly in-house, but some of the things that are in the plays that are on the Bussey building, the Royal Court Theatre and others have been there. They have come in through actually our tenants in the Bussey building, who we allow them to, our business model is to allow other people who know what they're doing, do it, rather than think you can do it all yourself. So we can't do it all ourselves, but we get people who can do it, and they run successful businesses. If you've been there, go to the Rooftop Film Club. If you have, it's worthwhile going there. You see we're not planning to have a film club in the rooftop here, but it's the same sort of idea, getting people to come in and they can work and create the space for its use.
Okay, great. That's thank you very much. Brilliant. So thank you very much, Copeland, RJK.